This is question number 3 from Jan 2024 Edexcel Unit 4 Biology question paper. Beginning with question number 3. Let's begin. So it says, apple maggot flies are thought to have evolved from hawthorn flies by sympatric speciation. Hawthorn flies are native to North America. They lay their eggs in the berries of the hawthorn bush. The eggs hatch into maggots, and the maggots develop into adult flies. State the meaning of the term sympatric speciation. Right. So, what you have to know when it comes to speciation, there are mainly two types. One is allopatric speciation, and the other one, as they asked, sympatric speciation. So, speciation basically means how two different species are evolving, maybe, or a different species is evolving from a previous one. So when it comes to allopatric speciation, it generally means maybe two like groups of organisms from a single species are being divided due to certain maybe physical or geographical barriers, and that's why they evolved over time into two different species. Sympatric speciation, on the other hand, means that there was no physical barriers, but due to certain behavioral changes or mechanical or seasonal changes, maybe for example due to climate change, groups of organisms within that specific species did not breed with each other anymore, and over time they developed into a different species. So for sympatric speciation, you could say that it's like a new species is evolving from one that was already present, and there is no physical barriers. You have to mention that, otherwise it could also like have some similarities to allopatric speciation. So you have to mention that there are no physical or geographical barriers, and rather there are like, due to seasonal or mechanical or behavioral changes, a different species has been evolved. This is the next question. Which row of the table represents sympatric speciation? The shapes shaded dark gray, as in here, represent the original species, and the shapes shaded light gray represent the new species. So as you can see, original species in all four options, they have dark gray, so this is originally. And the first step in speciation, let's see A. It shows that there two groups have become from that one single group like that, and afterwards one of them became the new species and one of them was the pre-existing one. But this cannot happen, as we discussed earlier, that in sympatric speciation they cannot be physically or geographically isolated, but you can see that the species were indeed isolated either physically or geographically. So this is not the one. Here, the group of organisms are separating. Here still, for this group, they're still part of the same species. You can see it's dark gray, and then they became light gray. This cannot happen because organisms from the same species are not going to move away. Why would they move away if there are no barriers or physical and geographical barriers? It's not going to happen. Same for this one. You can see they're moving away. For D, you can see that here they were one single species, but it's light gray over here, and it's gotten bigger over time, like the final species. So you can see there were no physical or geographical barriers, and they were not isolated from each other, but maybe due to some other factors. It could be anything like behavioral changes or maybe climate change. Another species developed while staying in the same place. So D is the example of sympatric speciation. This is question number C from 3. So it says, following the introduction of apple trees to North America, a small group of the hawthorn flies started laying their eggs in the apples. The diagram shows two types of fruit and the time of the year that the fruits are produced. So you can see June, July, August, September, October. So hawthorn berries uh, this is the time when hawthorn berries are growing, and apples grow in almost like mid-August. So the question is, suggest two adaptations needed for this change in behavior of the flies. So originally they were laying eggs in hawthorn berries that grew in almost late September, but then some of them started laying eggs in apples which grow in mid-August. So I'd say two adaptations that the flies would have to lay eggs in mid-August, which is probably a different temperature compared to like late September in America. So they are laying eggs at a different temperature. So the maggots or the eggs have to survive that different temperature, and they're laying eggs at a different time of the year compared to the normal time when hawthorn flies were laying eggs. So one is they have to survive at a different temperature. The eggs or maggots would have to survive at a different temperature, and they're specifically laying eggs at a different temperature as well. Also, they have to adapt to laying eggs in an apple. Like as you can see, they're very different from each other, like compared to hawthorn berries. So they have to penetrate the apple. They have to be suitable to lay eggs in the apple. So I think these are two adaptations. The next question is, explain what had to occur for changes in these flies to be inherited. So what occurred for these changes to happen in the flies, right? So always when we are talking about changes, the basic thing to mention is mutation. So of course we have to mention that a mutation occurred in one of the genes of a fly, or you can say in an allele of the fly, and they had a selection advantage due to that, because they're getting to eat a different fruit, they're getting to eat apple and lay eggs in apple, and as a result there's less competition. So there's a selection advantage, and that's why the allele or the genes were passed on. The alleles and the genes were present in the gametes. It's really important to mention gametes because that's what you pass on. That's what is being passed on to the offspring. So the gametes had this mutation or this changed alleles or this mutated genes, and they were present in gametes which were passed on to the offspring. And as a result, they had the number of the offspring with this gametes or slash genes slash alleles increased. And this happened because there was selection pressure. It's really important to mention selection pressure, and that's why the mutation occurred. Explain why it is an advantage for the hawthorn fly and the apple maggot fly to lay their eggs in the fruits of different plants. So the first thing that should come into your mind without even thinking is that there is less competition, and you can be more specific for more marks, which is less interspecific competition, which is competition between two different species. So you have to be really careful here with your wording because it's interspecific. It's definitely not intraspecific, which means competition within a single species, right? So there would be less interspecific competition, which is competition between hawthorn flies and apple maggot flies, and that's why they get more food, they get more space to lay their eggs if they're choosing different options, different fruits and different plants, and that's why their number of offspring will increase, their population increases, and that is a selection advantage. And the last question is, suggest how these flies became reproductively isolated. Use the information in the diagram to support your answer. So reproductively isolated, which they're again talking about sympatric speciation, right? So how did they become reproductively isolated? So let's go back. So this was the diagram. So as you can see that if they're laying eggs in apples and hawthorn berries, they're doing that during different times of the year, which means that they were probably laying egg at different times of the year. So these two species of flies were present at different times of the year. And as a result, over time, through evolution, their behavior changed, maybe due to seasonal changes, due to this temperature changes, their behavior changed, and they started breeding. Their breeding behavior changed as a result, and as a result, over the long term, their gametes also changed.